Motorsports presents the American Le Mans Series Race of 1,000 Years. It's been 90 days since the Olympic Games ended and we left Australia, but now we're back down under, 900 miles west of Sydney in Adelaide, a city of some 1 million people in the state of South Australia.
Well, here we are then, and Happy New Year, as we make our way down to the quite difficult first set of chicanes. They're quite fast, as we'll try and power through now. LMP1 machinery. We are, of course, in the iconic Crocodile Dun Audi R8R, because when else do you get an opportunity to drive this car? As we've got a Cadillac down inside, as well. Bit shoulders out quite early on. But yes, this is the one-off, the race of 1,000 years from the American Le Mans Series 2000 season. Supposed to mark sort of the cohesive endurance racing scene that Don Panos had envisioned for the future, which unfortunately never turned out to be until quite recently in 2024, 2025. Perhaps he was just 25 years ahead of his time. We'll get onto that a bit later. But yes, this race was supposed to be a 1,000-kilometre street race as we get up onto the curves. Yes, 1,000-kilometre street race at Adelaide, which I think was probably one of the last few big events, other than perhaps the V8 supercars and a couple of Australian GT racing a couple of years later. But obviously it was famous for the Formula 1 that was here, but unfortunately Melbourne took that, so I don't know how much racing there still is in Adelaide, but the street races go was actually quite a good one. I'm not a massive fan of I say street racing, I think that's not true though. There's quite a lot of them are just sort of wedged into a city, regardless of how well they actually do, but that's the politics of motorsport, I suppose. But this one actually, let's say, you got a nice long straight, is fairly wide, overtaking, as well as these AI in the set, of course, and especially this, as we go down the inside of the panels, we'll try and get a third place early on, although he's now on the inside for the next couple of corners, so try that again. As I was saying, yes, the AI actually very good, and this track mod is excellent. It was, I'll put a link in the description along with everything else, all the cars and liveries. People would like to replicate it. As we go around the outside into these next complex of corners, I think we're heading around the outside. Very good move. We'll block it off, park it on the apex. There he is behind us, right. We'll try and crack on and catch up and help our teammate. In the actual race, it was the sister car would take the lead from us, when I think McNish did stick it on pole. And unfortunately the panels didn't have such a good time at this race, but again, I'll get into that in a bit. Sort of the general 2000 review, shall we do, of the American Le Mans Series. It was sort of them, since the beginning really, the Audis had built upon the 1999 season with this new R8R, essentially built from the ground up, and Audi had, oh again, right that curb. Yeah, Audi had sort of built this car for expecting a titanic battle between Beamer, Mercedes, Toyota, Nissan, so they had put everything they had into designing this car, which unfortunately a lot of them dropped out. Mercedes, Toyota and Nissan all withdrew from sports car then, just due to the changing landscape. But I'd say they missed out, really. FIA GT Racing and the American Le Mans Series, as you may have guessed, is an era I absolutely love. Hence why we're at this unique circuit, a unique race, if any. And as the panels gets blocked by the beamers there, well, they were quite early to be lapped cars, but anything can happen on the street circuit. So yeah, so a lot of manufacturers had dropped out, sports car racing, and even BMW, who had sort of hit the ground running in 1999, or at least got up to speed in 1999, had already set to look to go to Formula 1 in 2000, so they made some minor upgrades to the car for the 2000 season, and it showed they couldn't really repeat the previous year's performance. And by the end of the season, which would have been, well, Adelaide was the last race of the season, but I think they were mathematically out of contention for the title by Las Vegas. So I think after that they decided not to come to this race, unfortunately. So for the LMP cars, it was the 2 Audis and then the 3 panels. Yeah, the panels from the current season, as well as then that they were testing the 2001 car for next year, bringing the LMP 07, which unfortunately they were expecting to do a 1,000-kilometre test session, but it only lasted 2 laps, and that was it. So unfortunately for them, they threw that car all the way out here for it to do not much to the Viper. Gets strangely defensive as we are now going to be attacked by the panels down the inside. Oh, going to the back of the sister car. It was just a friendly nudge. Brakes a little bit too late, and we're back down to 3rd, although I don't think we have much damage. And then we've got the other panels right behind us. These AIs are really quick, which is great. I absolutely love it. This is going to be a good. I've set it to do 100 kilometers, so it's a much smaller 1,000-kilometer race, which will go into darkness at some point. But yeah, the panels didn't have such a great time in Adelaide. I think one of the what was it? The oh yeah, they had an all-Australian outfit, which was Brabham, Greg Murphy and Jason Bright, supercar legends. They ended up 3rd in class, well, not 3rd overall, just 3rd in class. Whereas the car that was Johnny O'Connell, who was always quick in that car, unfortunately was disqualified because Klaus Graf was put into that car, but it wasn't declared at the start of the race, so basically it was in quotations an illegal driver drove that car. So when I hit all this GT traffic, which is the Porsche 993s, GTRs. Which is alright, because it bunches nice and close, so at least we can try and get some overtakes done. I think that's an optimistic move there, but we'll play it cautious. Although we'll go around the outside here and we'll pick up a place on that panel, so I don't know if he's still there or not. I think he is. I'm going to give him space. If he is, yep, he's still there. Yeah, I'm not going to quite be able to go around the outside. Can I tuck it down the inside? But no, the problem is if I hit those curbs, it's going to launch me into him. I think, once again, now I'm putting up a good fight. This is going to be a great race. As I say, I can clatter the curbs there. They are a little bit fast in a straight line, so I would try and get the toe. And if I hit that apex too much, it does suddenly skating out to the left there, so I'll try not to do that again. Yeah, so I was saying, so one of the cars, third in class, another one disqualified, and then the new car for the next year, 2001, LMP07, only completed 2 laps, and that was it. So, challenge review wise to the race, not great. But during the season, though, I say it was sort of Audi dominant, and then Panos really came back strong in the latter half of the season, which was quite a big surprise to Audi, because say McNish did end up winning the title here in Adelaide. So yeah, and I guess as we're talking about Audi, we can look at their, I would say season review, but I mean they pretty much won everything. I think some beamers and the panels did win a couple of races, but the Audi was dominant and would go on to be the dominant LMP car in this era. But for the race, it was 1-2 for Audi for qualifying, and although McNish did have a bad back from doing some PR work, apparently getting out of a kill as we get real close to that. Dick Barber Porsche's that. So he was quite delicate for the weekend, getting in and out of the car. And they had brought on Brad Jones, who always got a big pile up there, and the panel, I don't know if he pushed me, but it was awfully close. It's getting very aggressive to overtake me. We've now lost the leading 2, but the traffic should hopefully help us here. But yes, Brad Jones was brought on to as a super substitute just in case McNish couldn't, as we've got the panels all over the back of us. He's going down the inside. That's quite the bold move for turn 1 chicane. There's not much we can do with that, and we'll just have to see if we can catch up. We will need to make a pit stop. Can't quite do I think it's 27 laps on the tank of fuel, so I've done for halfway, and those guys should have to pit as well. Yes, there was a substitute for McNish if he couldn't race, but he did end up doing most of the race. With Dindo Capello as his teammate. But yes, he ended up winning the American Lawn Series driver's title with Audi. And unfortunately the sister car, which was Frank Bieler and Emanuele Pirro, always got a car upside down there, and the pile of cars get even bigger. But we wouldn't be in a Assetto Corsa race without a massive pile up. Even though the AIG seem to be behaving really well, I shouldn't sound so surprised these days, but this fight I'm having with these panels in the sister car is great, but unfortunately there's always something somewhere. There's a corner that they can't seem to comprehend, so there we go. But yes, the sister Audi, which had the red trimmings, because this car would have the yellow trimmings, unfortunately it didn't quite come together. It went around the outside of some lapped cars, actually coming up to this corner, not this one. I should look at the names or learn the names of this corner. It went around the outside of a Conrad car here and went into the wall there, which ultimately destroyed the front end, and I think it got as far as this Adelaide bridge, to where it came to a halt, and that was it. I think that was 170 laps it did, and that was that. So again, sort of a story of two halves with Audi, having been dominant all season, but I mean, to have one car take the win, especially the crocodile patent car. Yes, and then the other technically manufacturer team is the Cadillacs, which was their first year. They'd scored points here and there. I think they had a best finish of 4th or 5th at the Nürburgring earlier in the year, in the season. But at this race, unfortunately, the car's obviously fairly tired, and I think Cadillac had looked to develop the car for next year. So I think they both retired with mechanical issues quite early on during the race. Which is a shame, because I quite like the look of the early Cadillacs. There's just something very noughties prototype about them. And really, for the Cadillac that season, I mean, they had really only prioritised to do Le Mans, so they only did a couple of races beforehand and didn't really do many after. It was sort of the you had the Team Cadillac, which did the American races, and then you had the ALMS team, which are based in France, but then did sort of the European stuff, and then the Australian Adelaide race. And so really the combined points would have done really well, but the fact that they only picked with 2 teams and picked different couple of races throughout the season, they didn't really score many points at all. So they would look to build for next season is the BMW, because a little bit out of shape. We'll go down the inside. I guess that brings us on to the GTS class. The BMW actually wasn't in the GTS class. The GTS class was actually fairly small for this race, and I think pretty much the season it was completely dominated by the Dodge Viper or Chrysler Viper, depending on where you were. That car was absolutely dominant, and not even just the American Le Mans series. It did the 12 Hours of Sebring it won, and then it also won the 24 Hours of Nürburgring and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I think that's just trying to rattle around my brain. Or was it the Daytona? Sorry, Daytona 24 Hours and 24 Hours Le Mans. It did win the Nürburgring as well. Was it 1999 and then 2001, 2002 perhaps? Or as the sun suddenly is glaring in front of us. And there's said Viper, who's going again defensive for a GTS class, and we've taken that a little bit wrong. I don't think I was ever going to make that corner at that speed at that angle, but there we go. Still within reach of this second place panels or third place panels. I'm pretty sure I'm either third or fourth at this point. But yes, the GTS class was absolutely dominated by the Viper. The Corvettes they did pick a couple of races throughout the season, but they never really did enough racing to be competitive or points on the board. So unfortunately, they didn't turn up for this race either. But I guess with the Viper being so good, again, the championship was already decided, so you might as well concentrate on next year's car. And we all know how the Corvette turned out to be, because it was essentially like what the Viper was. It was the car to beat in that class. As we try and get past the Chamberlain car, so Orica were the classic, the iconic red liveried Vipers, which they had 2 of them, and then Chamberlain, they had 2 down on paper, but only 1 turned up. So for this race, because it's sim racing, you can do what you want. So I've chosen to have both Chamberlain cars, as well as there are a few other cars I've added that were supposed to turn up and didn't, just to increase the size of the field. I mean, it wasn't a small field of cars at this race, but it's always good to just try and get as many in, as much as my computer will allow me to. So yeah, so there are 2 Chamberlain Vipers in this race and 2 Orica ones in this race. And then the only other cars in the GTS class were the 911 GT2s, which were they were the 993s, weren't they? They were pretty old by this point. I think I've put 2 in this race, but I think only one of them actually turned up. But again, I say they were quite out of date by this point, so they weren't really in contention with the GTS class, so it was really only Vipers only at this point. Which I think one of them was a Intersport Run Viper, a Porsche, and is it a Rook Racing? The Rook Racing one hadn't turned up because again the title had been wrapped up, so there's no point in sending a car halfway across the globe. Oh, as we've got a beamer off there, and he's going to come straight back on, and that's going to cost us a lot of time. Thank you very much. At least we didn't hit him. Yes, that wraps up the GTS class really. It was Viper dominant, Corvette weren't really in it, and the Porsches were very old. And I think at the time when I was doing research for this, there was an article saying how they couldn't believe how Porsche were let's nearly lose it. I suppose more interested in building an SUV than they were building new racing cars for the GTS class, which I guess we all know now that perhaps the SUV idea actually saved them, and now why every single car is an SUV. But they did also go on to continue to race in motorsport, which I guess leads us on to the GT class. We have the Viper off there, although I think the fuel lights come on, so I'm going to come in for a pit stop.
The barrier brought out the pace car for what has been only full course caution of this event. That gave the leader the opportunity to make a leisurely pit stop under the yellow flag, and McNish made the decision, I'm staying in.
A couple of hand signals over to one of his engineers saying that
Right, so we leave the pit lane, everything looks clear, quite a clear track ahead of us, so we can see we can hunt down our panels and sister car rivals. I'm sure there'll be a lot of black traffic to go through, but I think, as I was saying before our pit stop, we've covered the LMP cars and the GTS class, now we're on to the GT class. Once again, it was only 2 manufacturers really. It was the new Porsche 996, which was sort of the first off-the-shelf race car, which is why everyone favoured it. And also, it didn't really get much coverage during the races actually, because it was sort of fire, the immovable object versus the unstoppable force really. Sort of, it also equal footing that there wasn't really much racing, and the only other competitor was BMW, who had newly joined with their M3, but this was only a 6-cylinder one, so it was really underpowered and not really competitive at all. I think they did get one race win that only got taken away due to a fuel cell, I think, wrong size. So it was a disappointing start to the BMW M3, but we all know how that would go on to be with its V8 eventually put in it. I think that was the following year. So that really covers all the classes. It was, it was very early days in the American Le Mans series. Everyone wanted to be in the LMP category, and so the GT series would eventually sort itself out, as it did across all the other series. So the whole point of the Adelaide race was to encourage racing teams in this part of the globe to join what Don Panels would go on to be, would be the Asia Pacific Le Mans series, which would again just be the American Le Mans series, but it would be in Asia. And then what had happened before was he'd already set a precursor in 1999 for the Fuji 1000KM race, so it was let's forget how it passes Dick Barber back marker. It's been quite just about to be quite careful at this stage of the race because the RA do tend to be a bit sleepy. But that was mine. But yes, he set the precursor at the Fuji 1000KM race in 1999, and essentially, I believe it was winners of class got an automatic entry into the 2024 hour of Le Mans. So he was hoping to build on that, so have a race in Japan, and then hopefully persuade some Australian teams, and then he had also planned a race at Sepang for the sort of end. Well, actually, it was November 2001, which, of course, those global events would ultimately postpone that race until the following year, which by then there wasn't much interest to begin with, and whatever interest there was, as we get ended by the people there. Probably not me saying they were a bit sluggish. Yes, whatever interest there had been, which there wasn't much, there was now none at all. So ultimately, panels decided to can the idea of the Asia Pacific Le Mans series, and also at the same time he was trying to do the European Le Mans series, which had sort of better groundwork done. They already had a season of it in quotations because it ran alongside the American Le Mans series, where they did Donington for 1 year, and then they did Silverstone, Nürburgring. I think they did one in Spain, Portugal, and I think even one in Russia. Well, they had been planned, but I don't think they went ahead. But it sounded like a pretty good season we had planned, because it would start with 12 hours of Sebring and end with Petit Le Mans, and then we would have a couple of European rounds in between to start with. That actually sounded, on paper, it looked alright. But again, unfortunately, just because of the FI GT series, so the teams were already in a racing series in Europe. They didn't want to then have to spend more money on a different class of car because they weren't compatible to then race again in Europe still, but just in a different series. So it made sense. So unfortunately that didn't go ahead. But it was the same with the blow. I mean, even if we look back at Japan at that point in time, at sort of the turn of the century, early noughties, Group C had just finished. Not just finished, but a couple of years since it just finished, so everyone was still trying to find their footing and what direction to go. I think Japan ultimately went touring cars. And same with Australia. I mean, they already had the V8 supercars. Well, the Australian touring cars turning into V8 supercars. That was their bread and butter of motorsport. Australia did do a what was it, a GT Nations Cup, which started in 2000, but that only lasted a couple of years. So I think people were a bit confused with the classes, because I think that did, when it was still the 24 hours of Bathurst, and it was the two Holdens that came first and second against like Lamborghini Diablos and Ferrari 550s and stuff like that. So yeah, so that ultimately folded in 2004, and then it wouldn't it wouldn't really be until like sort of the mid noughties, even the late noughties, even like sort of 2007, 8, 9 is where organisers would sort of set the way for what endurance racing we kind of see today, the sort of the foundations. Because it took several attempts for an Asian Le Mans series. So I think they did, it was it Japan Le Mans Series Challenge, I think, which only lasted for 2 seasons. Because by then it was already the Super GT in Japan, and that was already quite popular. And then they tried the Asian Le Mans Series again in 2009, and then they relaunched it again in 2013, where they had enough interest, and I think that's again it's still continuing today. And again, the European Le Mans Series, I mean, panels tried to do it early 2000s, and then the ACO took over it a couple of years later, and again that's still going today. And in 2025 they're talking about having privateer prototypes being allowed for the Asian Le Mans Series. I haven't know anything about the European Le Mans Series, but I'd be surprised if otherwise, because it's all a cohesive endurance racing experience. It's GT3s, LMP2s, and then hopefully prototypes. But it was a very turbulent time in the early noughties. I mean, if you look at other racing series, not just GT or prototypes, F1 just gone over a major overhaul of the new V10 rockets, as well as sort of the Champ Car IndyCar debacle. That was at the height of its turbulence around the early noughties, and before they eventually figured out single-seater racing in the States. But yeah, there just wasn't the infrastructure or manufacturer interest. There was so much going on that whatever you agree, whatever series you had invested in, there wasn't really money to sort of pull out and go somewhere else, which is why ultimately, you know, you had Nissan drop out, Mercedes drop out, BMW ultimately moved to F1 for a bit. Yeah, and Toyota dropped out, but again they also were an F1 at that point, so yeah, again, like I said before, Don Panels was just really ahead of his time, and just as much as it would have been great to see. And I think since doing all this research, I do plan to do an alternative take on, if he had been successful, what would Asian Pacific Le Mans Series look like in the early noughties, to try and get past another 996 backmarker, because they were pretty much the standard, or would be the standard in GT racing at the time. Hey, what would it looked at? We know there were only 3 races. We know it was Fuji, Australia in Adelaide, and Sepang in Malaysia. So I don't know what other, whether they were going out as far as China at that point. I mean, the F1 didn't go to China until about 2004, was it? And Singapore in 2007, 2008. So it would be a while before top tier motorsport series would go to that part of the world. And I think the European Le Mans Canada was fairly predictable. It would have been either races that the FIA GT cars weren't racing at, just to be different, but also if they could take the FIA GT racing cars, then that would, you know, stuff like Spa and iconic tracks like that would obviously take both, as much as I'm sure the ACA would try and play political games to stop them. But again, also like to see, you know, I mean, you had a little bit of it, but GT1 cars versus the LMP cars of the time. I mean, you had it at the sort of in the 1999 American Le Mans series. Obviously, you had the panels as that were still the GT1 cars there. I think they just increased the fuel tank size to offset the fuel efficiency. Now, was there another GT1 car? I don't know if there was now. But yeah, you know, imagine if Mercedes and that hadn't dropped out. Also, I was even looking at this race. I mean, this was the end of the 2000 series, and a lot of teams hadn't showed up. I mean, I already said that I've added a couple of cars, but I mean, I could have gone ahead and added the BMWs, because they didn't turn up because their championship was, they were already out of it, and like I said, they were going to F1, so they called it quits then. Also, as well as the Corvettes as well. Again, I could have added them in, so I think I am planning on doing a ultimate career mode where I have to pick a era or pick a year to start in, and then, like I said, I can then, you know, I can create my own Asia Pacific Le Mans series and see what would have happened, as well as then European Le Mans series, and even mix the FIA GT series and the European Le Mans series together. Sort of create my own alternative storyline. What's it called? The multiverse. That's it. Like a sort of, you know, what would happen in an alternative timeline if you had got everything right, and it was then a Don Panels run endurance racing series across the globe. I mean, I find that interesting. I don't know if anyone else does, but yeah, that's my plans for 2025. That is, I'm going to do a ultimate career mode. It's going to be suggested to me by AI, and what I mean by that is AI will dictate like a points-based system on where I finish, depending on what car I'm in, depends on what targets I'm set for where I finish, and then obviously and then I get points for if I beat my targets, obviously position, whether I crash or not, clean racing, and then also have a driver profile where I get points based on that, and then the more driver profile points I get, the higher level I get, which means the more prestigious teams I can race for. So I'll start in the lower class and work my way up, and then obviously because the set of course has all the cars, I can choose whatever series, and it won't just stick to the American Le Mans series as much as so far my videos are based on. But I do believe this is the final lap, and I think we're about to cross the line in third place, behind Panos and our sister Audi that we couldn't catch in the end. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've had all a good new year, and I look forward to creating more videos in 2025. Until then, take care, and I'll catch you next time.